Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel. Bless Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, is a time for reflection on how we have lived this past year, wrongs we have done, finding courage within ourselves to repair those wrongs to the extent we can, and hopeful anticipation that in the year to come, we will find opportunity to do things differently. So, hopeful New Year to you, and good morning.
Good morning.
But wait, is it a good morning? When I say good, do I mean that it feels good? Or is this morning actually doing something good? Would I say to this morning like I say to my dog, "Oh, you're such a good morning"? Or is it just that you, my people, are so good looking? You look marvelous today. Oh, never mind what makes it good. Let's just rejoice and be glad in it. Just welcome to Buff. On Zoom and in person, all who come in the spirit of goodwill are... Goodwill? Oh, never mind. Let's just breathe easy together and experience whatever it is in this moment that is beautiful, loving, and true.
For our prelude this morning, the Phoenix Ensemble are going to join me in singing a song for my beloved wife, Genia, as it is her birthday. And this is a song that she has sung in several productions of the musical Fantastics. And we have actually been in the show together in our youth. So it's a sentimental song for both of us. Try to remember. Try to remember the kind of September when life was slow and oh so mellow. Try to remember the kind of September when grass was green and rain was yellow. Try to remember
Today we'll be exploring the question, why is there good in the world? In this life where we mess up and fall down, we overthink and underappreciate, get lost and find our way back to love. In this life in which we pursue God in all of its forms and feel betrayed when it eludes us, and still we return with strength, hope, and love. And so, thank you to Gus for lighting the chalice, and let's say together our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant.
We're going to sing Shabbat Shalom. It's number 214 in your gray hymn book. We're singing these Hebrew Jewish songs to honor Rosh Hashanah and the High Holy Days. And this one is a wonderful, simple song that when we get to the end, we're going to go faster and faster and faster, just like they do, okay?
And they don't really need their books probably for this one.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat,
All right, guys, I have a story for you today called With a Little Help from My Friends, and it has some pretty interesting pictures to go along with it. So if you want to get up close, maybe you can see the pictures. Oh, wait a minute, they're up there too. But anyway, so it starts off, if you'll notice on that school bus, there are a couple little, thanks a lot. There are a couple little kids in front. There are a lot of little kids in back having fun and chatting. And then there's a couple little kids in front all by themselves. There's a curly-haired kid and a straight-haired kid. What would you think? Maybe she's thinking, the one who's carrying the guitar case. What would you think if I sang out of tune? Out of tune means like you're singing really awfully. Like some of us do. Some of us don't really have as beautiful voices as others. And so we might be unsure if we should sing. But here, of course, you should sing. But in the book, she's wondering. So now she's at lunch alone, and the other kid's alone too. Actually, I suppose this could be what they're both thinking at the same time. Would you stand up and walk out on me? They're thinking about being alone. Then thinking, lend me your ear and I'll sing you a song. They're so far away, but one of them's going to start playing. And I'll try not to sing out of key. I can't tell from this picture, but maybe one of them is. But I also see that, or both of them, but they also look really happy singing together. They have just realized that they get by with a little help from their friends. It's good to be together. Get high with a little help from our friends. I think they're walking through the creeks and putting a kite up in the sky and playing games. Gonna try with a little help from my friends. Keep singing, even though you're still learning. Uh-oh, now it's starting to get a little bit Well, they're not sure what's going to happen. They're worried. What do I do? Oh no, it looks like one of them is going to be moving away. When my love is away, there's the moving truck taking all the stuff from the one kid's house, and she's moving away with the moving van. Does it worry you to be alone? See, one of them is alone in her bed now, and the other one is far, far away, trying to sleep in her tree house. How do I feel at the end of the day? There she's trying to sleep, trying really hard to sleep, but she's missing her friend. Sad because they're on their own. But they did try to stay in touch. They wrote letters. I don't know if you know what letters are, but it's a way of, with a pencil, putting things on paper and then sending it to another person so you can stay in touch. Get by with a little help from my friends. They're going to keep trying. They're going to keep trying to stay together. Now the one is alone again, coming off the bus, and all the other people seem like they're having fun. And the other one's alone again at lunch, thinking about their friend. And this one, they're drawing pictures of each other. They're far away. But what I love about this picture is the kid on the left is drawing a picture of the curly-haired kid and her cat, and the kid on the right is drawing a picture of the straight-haired kid and the dog. And you notice there's a dog on the left and a cat on the right, so they're friends still together in a sense. They get by with a little help from their friends. They're talking on the phone. Do you need anybody? They do. They need each other to love. Could it be anybody? Well, they're still away. They want somebody to love. But then they think about getting together again. Little help from their friends. Get by with a little help from our friends. They're so excited to see each other again. Now they're together with the guitar and the treehouse with a little help from their friends. Well, it's an interesting story, but I wonder if anybody has ever thought of, like, making music out of it. Huh. Well, any thoughts? What would you think if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out of me? Lend me your ear and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. Oh, I friends, to learn and to play, and to grow, and to be good in all of the ways that there are good that you find in yourself. Real quickly, I want you to know that in your orders of service, you don't have to look now because all the details are there. Announcements of important things, fun things, good learning things going to come up in the coming weeks. One thing is the community night dinner, which is beginning again. It's now going to happen every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. Please come. The retreat that's going to come third weekend in October. Lots of details in the order of service and also in the midweek update that you can find online every Wednesday, or you can subscribe online to get an email about every Wednesday. There's also today a meeting of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee that's going to happen at noon downstairs. And if you're new here, or on Zoom, please stay on Zoom to greet one another. Stay here or downstairs to greet one another. If you're new, to get acquainted with Buff, because the only way you can really know the spirit of Buff and Unitarian Universalism is to know how we are with each other. It has very little, well, it has nothing to do with what I say up here, but I hope it keeps us together in a sense. Anyway, there's a lot going on. There's also, wanted you to know there's a meeting next Sunday that's details in the order of service about having chairs in the sanctuary. Make sure it's comfortable and accessible for people who do better with chairs. But of course we want to do it in the right way at the right time for the right people, to the right degree, and so forth. So we want to have a good conversation about that, and that'll happen next Sunday. And here's Sharon.
Yep, I'm Sharon McCarty here on behalf of our Adult Religious Ed Committee, and I am happy to roll the drum and say we are ready to rock and roll. Thank you, Jocko. Yes. The goal of this committee is each quadrant of our calendar that we want to have an offering for you, one that appeals to your head and one that appeals to your heart. And so we'll see how this is a grand experiment this year. We hope you will come and join us. You'll see in your midweek update and right here in the inside of your service the topics, the dates, the times, how to register. You register online, and or you can register downstairs after the service today and next Sunday. Registration is required. It isn't a drop-in deal. So because we really need to know how many folks are coming. So I have to tell you that the team has been working very hard, pioneering this. We're excited. We hope you will seriously consider coming and join us for this fun. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sharon, and for all the work that your team has done to put these classes together. Now I'd like to invite you to join me in a spirit of meditation. Find yourself in a position that is both comfortable and in which you can be alert to the moment, not distracted. Bringing breath into your body slowly. Notice the place where goodness resides in you. Allow it to pervade into your whole being. And then from every cell into emanating spirit. Allow that goodness to flow beyond you to everyone, every being, all space. Don't worry over what will sustain it. Just know that this goodness that has created us, the best parts of us, this unearned goodness that has lifted and sustained each of us, has held us together even when we were hurting and distracted and least aware. Comes back to us again when we stop and we breathe and we recognize it coming from us, to us, and through us, and around and around. Let's take just a few moments of silence together now. Judy, will you join me up here?
Building community is essential at Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. It's a life-affirming, sometimes challenging, always complex art, one that takes practice, reflection, and reaffirmation from time to time.
As we grow in our relationships, we appreciate new faces, new ideas, and new perspectives. So we appreciate the opportunity today to welcome our newest members and to renew our sense of purpose as a beloved community. New members, will you please come forward?
Speaking now to the people of the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, will you embrace these new members who have pledged support to support the work of the community, but both financially and in their own unique ways, always rediscovering the intersections between their gifts and fresh opportunities for Buff to grow in its mission? Will you make room for these people and look for ways to include them in our caring community?
We will, joyfully. We will try our best with you while listening closely to know who you are We will offer you here a place of rest and solace and endless opportunities to learn and to serve. We will accept responsibility for our own actions, strive to practice forgiveness, and expect you to do the same. Having heard now how this congregation welcomes you, if you are ready to join us in our covenant, I will invite you to sign the membership book, but first, tell us a little bit about what brings you to Buff and what you bring to Buff.
Hi, good morning. I'm Natalie Johnson. I'm delighted to become a member of Buff today. I come from a long line of Unitarian, now Universalist, Unitarian Universalist. I'm a fourth generation UU, and we stretch back to the mid-19th century in Europe. I've been a UU all my life. I've been very active in my congregations. I've headed up pledge drives. I've taught kids RE. I've been involved in governance, including president of the board of one of my churches. What I bring to Buff, I think, is an open heart and willing hands. I love to work for the church, but I try to pace myself. I know what burnout is like, and I want to avoid that. But right now I have two passions. One of them is getting the Interweave program really going at Buff. This is the program to fight oppression of LGBTQIA+ people. And right now, particularly, we need support fighting oppression of trans people. My other passion is something Sharon spoke to, which is the adult RE team. I am going to, with support, co-facilitate a course in UU theology this winter, and I urge everybody who can to join. It will be, I think, a fascinating exploration of our theology. So that's it for me. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's walk over and you can do the business behind the scenes while Carol introduces herself. There you go.
Well, I'm none of those things. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a poor family. I have 12 brothers and sisters, and all of them but 2 have died. So we mostly grew up in government housing project and lived in black and white neighborhoods, which I thought was great. My sister Connie and I are the only ones who went to college, and I'm very proud of that. In my 30s, I hiked 170 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail, and it was a wonderful experience of nature, the beautiful forests, the lakes, and the mountains. I very much wanted to be part of saving these things for posterity. I spent 3 years in China teaching English, where I grew to understand and appreciate the different cultures and individual diversity. I was baptized Mormon. Feel very sorry for me. But I left the church many years ago, mostly because at that time, blacks were not allowed to hold the priesthood, neither were women, but I never thought about that. And there were many unanswered questions that I had, and I still do. Put my paper up there?
If that's easier. If it's easier to, would it be easier for you to, either way.
No. I came to this fellowship and felt immediately welcome, and that this was the place for me, because here we celebrate diversity. Black lives really do matter, of course they do. We work to right wrongs and to help those in need. We love the earth and want to heal and save it from the current crisis. Those are most of the things that I have to say. Then the music here is wonderful. I very much enjoy the choir and the instrumentals, and coming from a Mormon background in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, that really does mean a lot to me. And my very last thing is I get to wear my hats.
Yes, and you also get to wear your buttons. Natalie, could you give Carol Ann her button? And I'll grab a flower for her. And since you can do so much with your hands, hold a mic and hold your papers.
Oh yeah, thanks.
So sign, and I'll go ahead and print there later, so you can just sign, and we're set.
All right.
On the left, yeah, that's good. So now let's welcome them, and may this community of hope be blessed in our ministry together. May we honor the covenants we share, always growing, learning, and deepening our connections. In 1759, Voltaire published his novella Candide, a satire against religion, philosophy, government, war, and in particular, against the German philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz's publication Theodicy, which was one of countless theories that had been presented up to that point, and there have been countless more since then, theories about why evil exists in the world. Theodicy is not just the name of Leibniz's book, it is a general term for theological reflection and doctrine around the question of evil. And more specifically, if God is omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and infinitely benevolent, how can there be evil in this world? Leibniz answered this way: everything on earth, all that is so, and all that happens does so, because out of the infinitude of combinations of beings and doings possible, God chose to create the best one. That is, this is the best of all possible worlds. Voltaire had a hard time swallowing this. His skepticism was fueled by the century in which he and Leibniz lived, which, for better or worse, is much like our own. He wrote Candide in the middle of the 7 Years' War, in which nearly 1 million people would die. And it was just after the 1755 earthquake off the Iberian Peninsula that hit Morocco, Portugal, and Spain, killing perhaps 50,000 from the quake, fires, and the ensuing tsunami. Candide is the story of a young man who is mentored by a Professor Pangloss, which is kind of a mock-up of Leibniz, and their travels around the world encountering endless and farcically exaggerated hardship, cruelty, political oppression, and slaughter all around, and constantly smiling and celebrating their good fortune for living in the best of all possible worlds. But not all of us can be so oblivious and lighthearted all the time. It is so very human, instead, to wonder at the hardship of others and ourselves. Why this pain, suffering, and unfairness? It's not surprising that this is one of the central theological questions in some traditions. I certainly struggle with cynicism, wondering how can it be not just that I experience aches and pains, but that I cause pain, along with my human peers throughout history. In particular now, I am so confused and heartbroken seeing our elected leaders clamoring to prove themselves worthy of our adulation because of their mean-spiritedness, that they have done and plan to do even more to exacerbate suffering and division. Over the centuries, countless attempts to answer the why question, in my humble opinion, have slipped into absurdity. In part because the definition of evil is just too vague. Buddhists are tuned into the suffering aspect of it, which they say is caused by desire. Christians, well, maybe I am very familiar with all of a variety of Christian interpretations because I grew up in a Christian tradition in a country which has been primarily Christian. So I've encountered a great variety of explanations that vary depending upon what is considered evil. Evil arises when we don't follow the authority of those who believe they represent God or King or Scripture. Or it's part of a larger divine plan that we can't see. Or it's because God gave humans free will. Some saying that free will is a gift. Others that say free will is a test of how we're going to use it. Or the source of evil is the devil, demons, one or more actually verifiable entities on earth, always lurking, tempting, and firing us up. And of course, there are more secular explanations, like it's just nature doing its thing, or it's because trauma begets more trauma, or it's just random, maybe collateral damage. Or evil is an illusion. The universe is indifferent to humanity's concerns. An approach that I appreciate more than all of these is from the Jewish tradition, as in Rabbi Harold Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. On first reading of that title, one might assume that you just read why bad things happen to good people. But Kushner insists that that is the wrong question. It's an impossible question, and therefore probably not just irrelevant, but a harmful distraction from what we should be focusing on. What to do, how to respond when bad things happen, and how to prevent them from happening again. Now, while I'm critical of infallible pronouncements about evil on account of it being vague, I readily acknowledge that goodness is also quite vague. So it would be ridiculous to get too precise about where it comes from or what it's good for. But still, I'll start by saying that I'm not talking today simply about niceness, Niceness is nice, of course, as is kindness and love and a little help from our friends. But in addition, let's not shrink from this. Goodness is power. And nice people do not, dare I say, should not be afraid of their power. The power to heal, the power to subvert systems of oppression, the power of truth, the power of speaking the truth. This week, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson spoke at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, to honor the 60th anniversary of the KKK bombing of the church that killed 4 young girls. In the audience sat Sarah Collins Rudolph, who lost her sister, Ada Mae, in that bombing, along with her friends and her eye. Justice Jackson is in a position of power, and I believe that there is good in this world because she is using that power to call attention, perhaps not explicitly, but in the spirit of Rosh Hashanah, calling attention to our culpability as a nation, calling attention to our ongoing struggles to even acknowledge that slavery happened and racism exists, calling attention to the real possibility in a new day of overturning systems that reward brutality. But Rosh Hashanah is not really for pointing at the faults of others in passive dismay. Rather, it's an opportunity, not a one-time opportunity, but an opportunity to acknowledge honestly that we need to have these reflections over and over on a regular basis, to acknowledge our own culpability and to find goodness within ourselves that we can then use to step into a new day with hope and determination and the boundless power of love. Why is there good in the world? As I was writing this sermon yesterday, I was listening to the Beatles' Love album, Eleanor Rigby came on, and I immediately anticipated the upcoming line, Father Mackenzie writing the words to a sermon that no one will hear. But before I got to that line, my phone rang. It was my son Rick in Minneapolis. He was eager to tell me that he had just killed an ant with a hammer. My 30-year-old son. I did not ask what the circumstances that led him to killing an ant with a hammer because he rushed on. More importantly, he said, I called to tell you that this reminded me of a children's story you always used to tell at church. It's called, what was it called? It was called Henry's Awful Mistake, I told him. It was about a duck named Henry chasing an ant around his house with a hammer and destroying everything as he went, eventually realizing that that was not a good idea. I told Rick I was so glad that he'd taken something from his years in church. After a bit more conversation about his day, he said, I suppose you're writing today. What's the sermon about? I told him, then added the thing about Father Mackenzie. Rick laughed and said that I should include in the sermon that we hardly ever know how positively we've affected people with the things we've done. How rare it is to get a call out of the blue to say thank you. So let's remember that this is another great example of why there's good in the world. Because we do our best, never knowing the result. And of course, it reminded me of the 6 or 7 years ago when, thanks for your patience, when Rick had spoken from this pulpit. He'd just come back from a bike trip from here to Panama, and he was aglow to share with us about the incredible kindness that he had experienced, unearned. I don't remember if he speculated about the why, but he did note that as a scrawny, blonde gringo, he could have been resented or confronted with anger toward the indifference of our country, might have been told to go back where he came from, but he was just bowled over with the goodness that he experienced, the real welcome. Incalculable good has been done in this world, and by you. And it lingers and ripples and inspires, and sometimes, certainly not always, we get feedback. Sometimes it even comes around to make our own lives better. But there's good in the world because we give the best of ourselves, not focused on the rewards. There are two ways to approach the question, why? We can look back at what just happened for a cause of what's happening right now, what brought the good into the world from the past, or we can look ahead with a why to ask about the purpose. Why is there good in the world as far as what it's going to bring to us? Well, goodness, in my experience, comes from direct experience of that transcending mystery which moves us to a renewal of the Spirit. There is good in the world because we are mindful of beauty when we allow ourselves to be held by the beauty of the earth and its creatures. There is good in the world because of so many who were committed to the well-being of all, which happens to include all of us, all these years and decades and centuries later, all those who were committed to the slow work of peace and justice. There is good in the world because culture enables us to build on the innovations and the best practices and the collective insights of past generations. in ways that have been and will be more powerful than the solitary brain power or even moral power of any single individual. There is good because when there is hardship, pain, and death, there is also grief. There is grief because there is love. There is grief when we allow ourselves to feel the love, even in the midst of loss. And you just sang, and what was that line? And try to remember, without the hurt, the heart is hollow. In her memoir, Horror Stories, indie rocker Liz Phair writes about the death of her grandmother, Winnie. She says, "Something had gotten jostled loose in me with Winnie's passing. Something that had been blocked, and now I couldn't stop crying. In the days after, I became emotional at the drop of a hat, sentimental, regretful, in awe of the power of love, horrified because I couldn't get Winnie back. It became a joke between me and my boyfriend because I was not sad, I was just feeling. He would come over and find me crying while I was cooking, or a TV commercial would set me off. I knew in my heart that what I really couldn't accept was the act of dying itself. I was crying over the fact that everyone I loved had to die. I was crying because dying had to be a part of living." I especially liked that line, or maybe I especially needed to hear that line, was not just that she was sad, but that she was feeling, and how overwhelming that was. Another primary theme of Rosh Hashanah is death, the discipline to remember and to make ourselves contemplate death. Awareness that death helps us to focus on what matters most in living: relationships, love, service. Contemplating death helps us to make decisions about our future, decisions that can lead to better lives and a better world. There is good in this world because we have painstakingly built up good habits for ourselves. And because, with a little help from our friends, sometimes we can, if we take it one day at a time, resist and overcome bad habits that we have built up for ourselves, even addictions. And there is good in the world because we can give one another the benefit of the doubt. Because when we reactively assume someone is out to get us, when exposed to contemporary media that thrives on outrage, we can step back and breathe and reconsider and remember, never attribute to malice what can be explained by ignorance, indifference, or neglect. And there is good in the world because we also acknowledge that malice is real. And we know how to recognize it because we've held malice in our own hearts. And we've seen in ourselves, too, the alternative to malice: doing good, not just because it will get us what we want, because we know it won't some of the time, maybe most of the time, but that's not what drives us. Even when selfishness seems sometimes to have the bigger payoff. But why? Shouldn't it add up? No, it doesn't always add up the way we think it should or expect it or think we deserve. Goodness is not math. It's not science. Leibniz was no dummy. In addition to philosophy, he was a brilliant mathematician and developed differential and integral calculus independently of his contemporary Isaac Newton. But here's an important part of this equation I hope you'll take home with you when you go. Math with all of its clarity, and science, which I believe to be the best method of discovering what is true in the world. Neither of these can answer the question of what is good. They can give us very useful information about what is, but not about what ought to be. So in this sad, frustrating, agonizing world, where we think we should have figured it out by now, in this world, technology will not save us. No more than a charismatic leader will save us. Only the goodness of all of us and the goodness of this incredible community and this incredible community, this living being of earth that can save us, that being a reciprocal matter of taking care, of course. Through all of the difficulties and injustices, Candide's mentor, Pangloss, continues to insist that in the best of all possible worlds, it would be contradictory to change his mind about it being the best of all possible worlds. But Candide does eventually become disillusioned. And after many journeys and consultations with wise people, finally lead to his disillusionment, Candide and all of his friends settle down to cultivate their garden. May we do the same. Amen. This is about doing, not talking, not theorizing. When we take a collection every Sunday, we remember the need to give of ourselves, not just financially, but in all the ways that support the mission of this beloved community. When we leave these walls, the goodness that we share, the forgiveness that we offer, the openness that we open ourselves to. So, open yourselves in whatever way you find appropriate right now as the ushers come around. Thank you, Kevin, for thinking of that song. If we had sung, I mean, it was right on. Wait and see what a world this could be if we care, if we share, you and me. If I had thought for us to sing it, I would be bawling. And it is. Oh, yeah. Does anybody know what number it is?
146.
Okay. So if I sing out of tune, or better yet, if we really need one another when we're singing, especially sad songs and hopeful songs, because if we need to stop and cry or just take a breath, the others will carry us. So don't worry if you sing out of tune. Just stand up and sing number 146. And of course, that is just an excellent intro to What a Wonderful World. We definitely need each other.
I'm sorry. I'm supposed to leave. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. I see leaves of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day in the dark sacred night. And I think myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, and how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I see babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, what a wonderful
Thanks, Jim. I wouldn't have been able to get it together. So I'm going to extinguish the chalice now, but not the warmth of this community, the fire of our commitment, or the power of the love that we will now take with us as we go. So let's circle around for freedom.